When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about what do I believe Young Griff should actually do with invading Westeros. Now, I've done a couple videos talking about what I actually think is going to happen, but in this video, we're going to be talking about it if I was Jon Con, or I was Aegon, what would I be doing to most effectively conquer Westeros and then also hold Westeros? So before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. It helps channel grow, reach, or appeal that might like this content as well. And also, this video was kind of a comment suggested in another video, so if you guys have ideas for videos you guys would like me to see me do, let me know. I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. This one I just think is very interesting, and you guys really do love the Young Griff videos. They always do the best on the channel for the most part. So decided to do another one of these videos. Now, for me, Young Griff is in a very interesting position, because we know that Storm's End gets taken one way or another, very low casualties. It's taken by guile. So what this means is, at the point where we're going to try to build on where I think Aegon should go, he is in charge of Storm's End. He has taken a couple forts along, the coast of the Stormlands. So the question is going to be, where does he go from here? Does he rush and try to take King's Landing? Does he try to get some alliances going? What does he do before marching on King's Landing? Now, for me personally, if I'm Aegon and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the playing field, King's Landing right now is in a little bit better of a spot just because Kevin Lannister took over and he started to fix a lot of the problems of King's Landing. But we're going to find out very quickly that Kevin Lannister is dead, and that also Pycelle is dead as well. So I think an actual better plan would be to let Cersei create as much problems in King's Landing as possible. And while she's doing that, you can kind of start to, get all your power together. We know Arianne is on her way to meet Aegon. And I think if you're Aegon, you do not want a marriage here. Personally, you do not want a marriage. Because if you're Aegon, you want to use the idea that, well, I'm related to you. Right? I'm Elia's, child. I'm actually a cousin to you, Arianne, and all that. So it's kind of weird if we marry. And, well, I guess not weird in this world. Cousins kind of marry all the time. If we look at Tywin and, his and Joanna, they were cousins. But if you look at it from that way, you want to gain this alliance without having to give up Aegon's kind of marriage, because you want to save that. Now, Jon Con thinks about that quite a bit, that he wants to save Aegon for Daenerys. Now, the thing is, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think eventually Arianne is going to, I guess, kind of seduce Aegon, kind of use her qualities that we've seen her use with how she's able to get men to like her. She's also very attractive, as she's described in the books. So, for me, if you're Aegon here, you want to get the Dornish powers, and you want them to be marching up. You want to, combine your power of the Dornish forces, which are all, again, they're already ready to go. Like, they're already in the passes ready to strike. They've been sitting there for a while. And with them being very close to the Stormlands, it's not that far of a march to get all of these spears. Quentin says 60,000, so we'll go with that. And all of that alongside the Golden Company. And if you can get all of the Golden Company assembled, ready to go, let's say, he leaves like a good 1,000 to kind of man his, territory in the Stormlands. And they came over with 10,000. But let's say, because they kind of get split up a bit. All of them are kind of split up. Let's say they eventually get all their force back together, and they have about 9,000 of the Gold Company, plus whatever soldiers they can garner out of the Stormlands. Because, of course, some houses are going to flock to Young Griff's cause, because, again, trying to seek gaining favor with a new king. You look at King's Landing, it's not a hard sell to say that the Lannister power is on a decline. So I definitely think Aegon can sit here and just gain power. Something like Renly did, but he did it the wrong way. Renly had all of his power garnered. He just was very slow to act, and he was kind of playing at war. Aegon just needs to garner all of his power. He can get everybody assembled here. The Dornish, he can get a lot of the Stormlanders' houses that will support him. instead of maybe Stannis, who's a world's away, who can't protect them. Also, Young Griff now, technically, you could say he's the Lord of the Stormlands because he takes Storm's End, or Jon Con, whoever ends up getting the title for the time being. So for my idea here is that Aegon sits here and he waits because Cersei is going to cause problems with the Tyrell alliance, and if she pisses off the Tyrells enough, the Tyrells could also be looking to join the Aegon's cause, not more or less because of trying to get more marriage, because I think the big problem and why the Tyrells would probably stick with Tommen is Marjorie. Marjorie and Tommen's relationship is the reason that's kind of getting held together, and that whole alliance is still together, because at this point, the Tyrells have significantly more power than the Lannisters do. So I think where Young Griff could maybe gain the Tyrells is if Marjorie does die, something happens to her, or Tommen. So I think, again, all these things are very likely. I think that Aegon just sits back. Now, Marjorie isn't in King's Landing at this point. She is kind of with Lord Tarly. So at that point, it does make it a bit harder, but there is going to be a trial. Let's say the trial goes wrong and Marjorie ends up dying. Something along that. Or Cersei does something like she did in the show where she blows up the Sept. It's very likely that something could go wrong and that the Tyrells could look towards Aegon. Now, Aegon would be offering them revenge. He would be offering them probably a lot of power. I'm trying to think who could be a marriage proposal there that would maybe, link them a bit. I'm not sure who, because Jon Con at this point is not going to want to marry, and we know that because of the grayscale, so he's kind of off the tables. Maybe they do look to marry the Tyrells with the Dornish, but that doesn't seem like a good idea either because of the blood kind of feud between the two. I'm not sure, but I do think Aegon waiting here and having patience is what I would be doing if I was in his place. Now, once all this is, grouped up, you even also have Littlefinger to consider. Who knows? Littlefinger could also try to curry favor with Aegon. I think it's unlikely, but it could be a possibility. I think he takes all these forces. Let's say he has 70,000, right? That would count for about 60,000 Dornish, 10,000 Golden Company. It's not even counting other lords that join him when they see his power is growing. So we're just going to say a flat 70,000. I think you take that force, you go take King's Landing. I think King's Landing falls. Regardless of how it goes, I think it will be something kind of like the sack of King's Landing. I've talked about that in a video already with kind of the Tommen and Myrcella video I did. But I do think, for the most part, it will be a pretty easy battle to win, with the Lannister forces still being in the Riverlands, and the Tyrells kind of, I don't even know if they'd want to help if Tommen... The Tyrells are very hard to judge because everything banks on when does Marjorie possibly die, or when does Tommen possibly die, if that is actually by Aegon's hand. Now, I believe Aegon, still unmarried. I think that is a key part to this. Aegon cannot be married when Dany comes over, or else this all goes flat. Because I'm saying as well, how does Aegon actually rule the Seven Kingdoms after he takes them? Because in this scenario, he would take them. Now, let's say King's Landing goes well. I think it would. He sits the throne. He kind of, does all these things. Dany comes over, right? So, right now, I think the people of King's Landing would be very happy that Aegon is king, right? He's this person that was the heir to the throne back when Rhaegar was there, and we've seen the Lannisters, their terrible rule, how the Westeros has suffered. I think they'd be pretty happy, or at least King's Landing's folk anyway would be pretty happy with the outcome of this. So Dany comes over, let's say she lands in Dragonstone. What is Dany's reaction going to be? We've already been given a prophecy that there's going to be a Mummer's Dragon, right? And the reason I think they're not going to be married, or I don't think there's going to be an alliance between the two, or maybe they put aside the differences for the others or the White Walkers, but for me, I think it's because Aegon is going to get very confident. At this point, Aegon will have taken Storm's End, will have had he has an alliance with Dorne, possibly with the Tyrells as well. At this point, he would have 3 of the 7 kingdoms as his backing, and that's not even playing into my secret Varys theory, where I believe Varys actually has Tyrek or Tyreek Lannister, however you want to say it. I think it sounds cooler with Tyreek, but you know. And then also has Edric Storm. I believe he has both of them, and I think that's how he's going to try and rule over those kingdoms, by kind of having puppet rulers. But with this being said, I think Aegon is going to be maybe a little full of himself. You've already seen he's gaining a lot of confidence with how he deals with the Golden Company, how he's like, you know, he reveals himself and he's like, no, we're not going to Daenerys as beggars. We're going to kind of go to Westeros and conquer. And I think what Aegon's going to be thinking when Daenerys comes over is, why should I be having to give some of my rule to her? What has she done for me? How has she done anything in Westeros? She's done nothing. Right? She even had pretty much a failed state in Essos. Why would I want her to be ruling with me? I think that's going to be some of the attitude we see in the actual way it plays out. But in this scenario, me controlling Aegon and me, you know, saying Aegon, I think Aegon and Daenerys at this point would make a good couple and would make a very strong union. Just based upon the fact that they both have huge forces. Presumably, Dany might bring over the Dothraki, the Unsullied, maybe some sellsword companies. Maybe she leaves them in Essos. Not sure about that one. And then the dragons. So their armies together would be probably easily over 100,000 men. And then the dragons. So looking at that, it makes sense from that point of view. Aegon would still be unmarried. Daenerys presumably is not going to be married because I don't think she's going to keep her marriage to Hizdahr. With what Barristan's kind of done with Hizdahr, and I think Hizdahr will have a little bit of involvement in Sons of Harpy, and not as much as maybe Barristan thinks, or the Shathbait. I did a video on that this week if you want to look at that video. But I personally think that in this, it is in the best interest for Aegon to make a marriage alliance with Dany. I think Dany, if she does kind of believe that Aegon is a Targaryen and Aegon doesn't give her any reason to kind of not like him, I don't see why it couldn't work, right? So that in my way would be Aegon's best way of coming out on top and staying in his rule. Because Dany is a very big loop for me. Because you guys, we have to think that Dany is going to, and Aegon are going to have a conflict. I think most people believe at this point that Aegon is a Blackfire, which creates a problem because he's not the actual heir to the throne then, and Dany is. Even if Aegon is a Blackfire, this relationship still makes sense because of how influential Aegon is right now in the political, sphere of the world, where he controls 3 of the 7 kingdoms. It still would be a good marriage for Dany, but like I've talked about before, Dany likes the more, I guess, brutish type guys like Drogo. She came to really like Drogo. I mean, it was a forced relationship at the beginning, but she really started to like Drogo. The big muscly dudes. Dario is kind of the same way. He's just kind of the pirate aspect. He's not much like a barbarian kind of guy. He's kind of the cunning, like pirate. It's kind of how he's described. So I don't know if Aegon fits her definition of a guy she would like, because Aegon to me is very much described as a pretty boy, and I don't know if that's really Dany's type, personally. But again, I think this relationship works out, and I think Daenerys, it would be interesting the way she reacts, because I think she believes that the Iron Throne's hers. She's been told her that, after Viserys, she was the last Targaryen. I think we're going to run into the issues you're going to run into are Aegon not really being a Targaryen, and I think Aegon's general attitude towards Daenerys, I think, is going to be a lot different. I think all of this power and how quickly he's gaining this power is going to go to his head a bit. As other characters like Daenerys has been in power for a long time, she's used to this. Aegon's not. Aegon is used to being kind of privileged, where he's kind of taught, all the teachings, swordplay, very much pampered like a lord. He really hasn't seen a lot of the dark side of the world, and things like slavery and all that stuff. Daenerys has that. So I think it's going to be a disconnect in that part of it. But for me, the best outcome here, and how I would, counsel Aegon or be as Aegon, would be trying everything I could to marry Daenerys. even if that means basically giving up my role and just being kind of a king figure next to Daenerys, or say they don't even get married, right? They could always just say, we're going to have a joint rulership. I don't know how Dany would feel about that, but they always could try something like that where it's like the two of them rule together, but they're not married. I think either way, the only way Aegon survives the rest of the story is if he gets with Daenerys, like he's on her side, like they're working together. That's the only way this works. So thank you guys for watching the video. Thank you guys for the support the last couple weeks and the whole channel as well, and its lifespan. And I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.